George Mason, head basketball coach Tony Skinn, joins the Marching to Madness College Basketball Podcast as he embarks on his first season as a head coach at George Mason. Coach Kim English moved to Providence, as you well remember, and Coach Skinn, let's not forget now, was a major part of the 2006 George Mason Patriots team that went to the Final Four. Coach, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. Now, you averaged 11.8 points per game that season and moved your game forward every season. It felt like the Final Four season could have been your best defensively. I was wondering if I'm correct on that, number one, and then how you were able to improve your game by the season in that regard.
Yeah, it's people forget, that same team, with the exception of like one or two guys, that same team in 2006 that went to the Final Four was the exact same team in 2005 that, wasn't very good. And I think we won maybe 16 or 17 games. And during that offseason, we kind of made a commitment to ourselves, but also to, Coach Larranaga, that from a defensive standpoint, we had to be different. I think I averaged maybe 15 or 16 points as a junior. I think Lamar was up there 15 or 16. Jai the same. And so from an offensive standpoint, it was the exact same team, or actually even better our junior year offensively, but something was off. And once we kind of bought into the defensive side and, we got better and better, I think at some point we were like top 10, top 15 defensively. And that motivated us because we didn't want to lose. We didn't want to lose that. And, game after game, we were just able to get stops and, those close games because of the experience that we had playing together. It really, helped us down the stretch in winning games, like going to Wichita State on the road in the bracket buster, which had a huge, obviously buy-in for the NCAA tournament and getting an at-large bid. And at the time, just going on the road and winning some really good games in a very, very strong CAA league. So definitely.
As you were an assistant coach at Maryland, Louisiana Tech, Seton Hall,
and then Ohio State.
Talk about how you at what point in your career leading into that did you decide, hey, I want to be a coach?
Yeah, no, it's my journey's, I had a chance to play professionally, obviously, after the Final Four. Without the Final Four, I probably don't get the opportunity that I got as a player overseas. And going into my 7th year, I believe, I had signed a contract to go play in the Ukraine, in Kiev. And I had just finished qualifying for the Olympic for the Nigerian national team in the Olympics, and I actually got hurt in the Olympics. And it was the first time that I really dealt with any type of like real injury. I was fortunate to not have any real injuries while playing. And that one was kind of the deal breaker, and it ended up being a career-ending injury. And I think at the time I was 30, maybe 31. And, it was kind of then where I didn't exactly have the plan of wanting to get into coaching. But I was around, high school kids. I was around the AAU scene, and it just kind of just transitioned organically for me. And then within 2 years, not even maybe a year and a half of me retiring, I was kind of in the right place, right time. I kind of put myself in a position where when Coach Eric Conkle got the job at Louisiana Tech, he kind of knew that I had been coaching AAU. I had been coaching, the high school grassroots level. And so for him, for what he was trying to do with his program, he gave me an opportunity. And again, that's at the mid-major level, in a good league, the Conference USA. That's not always the path that guys have to take to get into coaching. So from the very start, I had that unique opportunity and just kind of grew ever since.
Think about George Mason basketball in the Atlantic 10 as very competitive. George Mason's a very competitive team to have to get ready for night in, night out. How do you move the potential of the Patriots now into maybe an A-10 contender, maybe a perennial top 4 team in the league?
Yeah, I think it's it's a combination of a lot of things. we had to get down and really go to work in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I got the job, there was only 4 scholarship players here. And
Mm-hmm.
so getting the talent that we needed, that was the very first thing that, I had to commit myself to, and myself and my staff. And to be honest with you, we're very, very fortunate with the guys that we got.
Mm-hmm.
The portal is not friendly if you don't grind, the portal is not very friendly. And again, we have I would say a little bit of a cheat code, just because the DMV is so talented, so rich. And every once in a while, you're going to get guys that, have opportunities to really play at whatever level. And we did that. We got a couple pieces, and I think that's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have the talent to be able to go out there and compete, but not we also have to have the experience, which we have. Got a couple 2-year guys, but for the most part, all our guys are seniors, a couple grad guys, and I think that's really where it starts.
Like we said, a great coaching career as an assistant with some really solid people. Obviously, Eric Conkle, he's now at Tulsa. You were with him at Louisiana Tech. Kevin Willard, Chris Holtman at Ohio State. How did you blend things they believed in and put them together to help, stimulate your ideas in general in basketball?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of learning for me, just because, again, having an opportunity to work with Coach Conkle for a couple years, when I really wouldn't say I didn't know the business. I had to learn on the fly. It's like getting any other job. You think you're ready for it, but you don't really know what you exactly signed up for. But having people like, Eric Conkle kind of leading the way and just watching and growing, I think it put me in a position where I was able to now, take what I already knew from, my perspective as a player, but then also some of the things that I learned from Coach Conkle, and taking that to South Orange, to kind of be alongside a guy that didn't need much help, Kevin Willard. But from the recruiting standpoint, from the way that I saw him just, handle day-to-day things, it allowed me and empowered me really to kind of have a vision of what this thing looks like. But he also gave me an opportunity to do a lot for him at Seton Hall, not just the recruiting, but, scouting, just the whole body of coaching, which then gave me an opportunity to go to Columbus. And, the plan was not to leave Seton Hall, but, this business and what we do is it's so hard. And anytime you have an opportunity to make a jump like that I did, you take it. And, basketball is such a full circle business. Going there for a year, I had no intentions of leaving Columbus. Who leaves Ohio State, right?
Right.
But then Kevin Willard, he gets Maryland. And obviously me and him have such a tight relationship that, he didn't hold it against me that I left him 10 months prior. So I was his first call when he got the Maryland job. And I think for him, he knew the comfort level of just knowing me and knowing who I am, also know that I'm from this area, and how that could benefit what we were trying to do at Maryland. So it's definitely been a journey for sure.
Sure. And looking at your roster now, Ronald Polite, he returns as your leading returning scorer. What are your thoughts on his leadership? And then he was a 37% shooter from 3, where he almost found, he was second in most shots taken on the team, and he was able to find his shots.
Yeah, no, he was, when I originally got the job, that was where, he was one of the pieces that I knew we could not lose. Anytime you have a lead guard that can put the type of numbers that he put up in this league, and he did it through injuries. I think a healthy Ronald Polite, when he's healthy, he's an all league guy. And especially at that position, that's something for me that there's a little bit of comfort knowing that I have that in my backcourt. And, these last couple of weeks that we've been working out, I mean, he's been everything that you would expect him to be as a leader, vocally, just as high IQ. He just does things naturally. And I'm just happy that he was able to stay out of the portal in, this crazy world of, coaches and, leaving and, things like that, that really a guy like him who's been through now, I'm his third coach, just staying the course, man. He's been a big piece of what we're trying to do thus far.
You got 10 new additions on your team. Jalen Haynes comes over from East Tennessee State. He posted 14.6 points, 6.5 boards per game for the Buccaneers. What are your thoughts on his game, and where has he taken it since coming aboard to George Mason in your program?
I mean, he's a beast. He's a guy that, again, you talking about, numbers. I mean, those type of numbers, I mean, those are all league numbers. He was a guy that we got laid out the portal, and he's going to have a chance. He's got to still go through a waiver process, being a two-time transfer, but, we're hoping for the best there. But, you talk about having a guy that can be versatile for you, not only in the post, but also on the perimeter. He's got a chance.
Mm-hmm. Also, Darius Maddox started 19 of his 20 games as he came over from Virginia Tech. What are key things he can leave you in that'll be important here in his first season with the Patriots?
Yeah, I mean, again, he spent a couple of years at the highest level. He was short of, I believe, his sophomore year before taking the leave of absence this past year. I think he made almost 63s. I think that translates into being a high-level shooter. And the way we're going to play, up-tempo, getting up and down, anytime you can have a guy like that that's on the floor for 30 minutes and can really space you out, that's big time. And just having him in our backcourt, I had a relationship with him and recruited him out of high school when I was at Seton Hall. And I think it came down to Seton Hall and Virginia Tech. And, talk about a guy that's just always been, I mean, he can really shoot the basketball. And, you need that in this day and age of college hoops.
Coach, you're talking about, or we're talking about rather, the transfer portal. You've got 8 of the 10 signees that came out of the portal. How long does it take, in your opinion, generally to make a rotation out of a large number of players who are coming in? And add, a player like Ronald Polite.
Yeah, I think it takes time. You get these 8 weeks in the summer. And you're not trying to win any championships in the summertime. I think it's just about individually becoming the best version of yourself as we work and we grind away. And I think our guys have kind of gotten a little bit of a sense of the expectations here. This is a little bit different than the past coaches for me from a personal standpoint, because I do believe we have what it takes here at George Mason. And, we're a long ways away. But having these guys and what I've seen thus far, I think we do have a competitive chance with the guys that we brought in. I think the way that I want to play from a pace standpoint, I'll be able to stretch the bench a little bit, which would give guys an opportunity to go out there and prove what they can do.
Coach Larranaga, we mentioned, and he was your head coach on the George Mason Final Four team. He took Miami to their first Final Four in history this season. So he was a lead 8 last year. So what is your take on Coach Larranaga and how he has, proliferated himself as one of the top coaches in the country, and then getting Miami into a position where they could get in the Final Four?
Yeah, I mean, he's been coaching for such a long time, and I can't remember the last time that Coach L didn't have a good team. Good coaches like himself typically what they're doing, regardless of the institution, I would say.
Yeah.
But just to watch what he's been able to do, it's really remarkable. I think he's one of the best teachers in the game. I think that always helps.
Sure.
But he's also had some really good assistants by his side. Coach Bill Courtney, Chris Caputo, who's now at GW, and obviously Coach Eric Conkle, who was with them for so many years. They found their niche, and he's just leading the way.
Looking at the Final Four, in addition to Miami, you had Florida Atlantic and San Diego State making their first appearance. Talk about college basketball now and how how competitive the sport is, as it feels like the top, or what's called the top of the sport, and the one bid leagues are getting closer together, but they're getting closer together in a positive way at a high level.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of what we talked about earlier. I think that disparity, there's just so much exposure from the high school level to grassroots level, and then by the time you get to college, a lot of these guys have been exposed to playing against the best of the best. And again, you separate the 6'11", the 7-foot, one and done guys that are top tier, that are going to Kentucky, that are going to Duke and Kansas. That disparity for everyone else is really slim, especially when you start talking about guys that are transferring, guys that have been in college now for 4 or 5 years. You get, a team, an average team now, they've got 3 or 4 22, 23-year-olds on their roster. Yeah. And anytime you can have that type of experience, you're always going to be able to compete regardless of who your opponent is. Now, if it's a best out of 5 series, maybe the higher level team wins, but when it's one game on a neutral floor, that's all it takes. So the FAUs of the world, the George Masons of the world, you're going to see, in my personal opinion, especially with this portal, you're going to continue to see that.
That's a good thing because, again, the competitiveness and the penchant to watch every night, in any league. Last thing, Coach Skinn, the NBA playoffs. I was just curious about your thoughts on the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic winning the title. And then it feels to me like this was the most competitive top to bottom playoff field in years.
You know what, Ken? I wish I could tell you a lot more about the NBA. But when I got the job on April 1st, I wasn't watching very many NBA games. We had visit after visit. When you bring in 9, 10 new guys, just imagine how many visits and how many dinners that is. But, again, a guy like Jokic, who's been, one of the most remarkable basketball players we've seen in years. He's done it in a quiet way, just because, Denver is not, it's not in the biggest market. But I do think that the NBA at this point is as competitive as it's ever been. Golden State obviously had their era and, might have lost a step, but to see Denver do it without, they did it in a different way. I thought that the one thing that they did, it played a little bit more like a college basketball team. Obviously, they had their piece, but they had 4 or 5 guys that any different night could really hurt you. You don't see that as much in the NBA. It's like 1 or 2 guys that are your main guys, but with the exception of Jokic, all those guys really were a threat. And I think that's what made it really difficult to guard them, to guard some of their actions, because you just couldn't key in on just 1 or 2 guys.
Coach Tony Skinn, ladies and gentlemen, at his alma mater, the GMU Patriots, George Mason up in Fairfax, Virginia. Coach, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and I hope we can do this again at some point.
No, absolutely, man. Anytime, man. I would love to jump back on, and definitely appreciate you bringing me on this morning.